The American empire faced downsizing in the early 1990s after the Warsaw Pact disbanded and Soviet troops withdrew home. American politicians demanded a reduction in military spending and the closure of most military bases in Europe. The solution was to start a war in Europe. Serbia, which was called Yugoslavia before 2006, openly resisted demands to open its economy to Western banks and corporations and refused to join the European Union. As a result, Serbia was demonized and targeted for destruction. An ongoing rebellion by some Albanian immigrants in Serbia's province of Kosovo was chosen as a NATO cause. The American CIA began shipping arms to the Islamic Kosovo Liberation Army, known as the KLA, and transported hundreds of Al-Qaeda mercenaries to Kosovo to attack Serbs. This was politically awkward since the KLA was on the U.S. State Department's list of terrorist groups. Serbian soldiers were dispatched to their southernmost province to repel these Islamic invaders. This increased the level of violence, and Serbia was blamed. Kosovo has been a province of Serbia for over 100 years, shown here in 1913. After World War II, nearby Albania was run by an inept communist government that made Albanians the poorest in Europe. This led to mass immigration, and nearby Kosovo was favored. Yugoslav dictator Tito allowed their immigration because he promoted the idea of multiculturalism, and by 1990, they represented 80% of the population. Frictions rose as these immigrants transformed Kosovo into an Albanian-speaking Muslim state. Since jobs were scarce, some Albanian immigrants formed criminal gangs and engaged in illicit businesses. Kosovo became a major gateway for smuggling heroin into Europe. This led to conflicts with local police and an increased presence of heavily armed federal police. Albanian gangs portrayed themselves as revolutionaries to justify their criminal activities. They formed the KLA and wore the insignia found on the Albanian flag. This symbol was also worn by Albanian Muslims who served in the German SS division pictured that fought Serbian partisans during World War II. The Christian Serbs in Kosovo disliked this invasion of Muslims and the increased violence, so many moved to other parts of Serbia. Armed clashes between KLA Muslim insurgents and the Serb army often erupted in villages, causing civilian casualties. The CIA and the administration of American President Bill Clinton spread misinformation that Serbian police and military units had begun ethnic cleansing and thousands of Albanians had been massacred. The KLA used dead bodies to stage massacres to fool foreign reporters. American President Bill Clinton demanded that Serbian troops leave Kosovo to allow a NATO peacekeeping force. President Clinton visited an Albanian refugee camp in Kosovo as part of a campaign to demonize Serbians. Serbia rejected intervention in its internal affairs, especially since foreign terrorists fueled this violence. The United Nations never sanctioned any actions against Serbia since proof was dubious. Clinton directed NATO to build up air power in the region as a threat during negotiations. The Serbs eventually agreed that NATO troops could enter Kosovo as temporary peacekeepers, but that Serbia would retain sovereignty over Kosovo. This refusal to cede Kosovo to the American Empire was not tolerated. NATO unleashed a massive aerial bombardment without approval from the United States Congress nor the UN Security Council. Over 1,000 NATO warplanes destroyed bridges, factories, oil refineries, television stations, electrical stations, trains, and trucks hundreds of miles from Kosovo to pressure Serbian leaders to submit. The attacks were ruthless, like when an American F-15 fighter bombed a passenger train as it crossed a bridge, killing 55 civilians. The United States Air Force destroyed all 8 bridges over the large Danube River to cripple the Serbian economy. The last bridge standing was at Novi Sad. Local people camped out on the bridge thinking this would prevent its destruction, and dozens were killed when it was destroyed. The downed bridges blocked river traffic on the Danube for months, causing economic problems throughout the Balkans. After 3 weeks of bombing with over 650 aircraft sorties per day, air crews were exhausted, the bomb inventory was low, and reports of thousands of civilian deaths from the aerial bombing caused embarrassment. President Clinton declared victory and accepted the original offer that Serbia retain sovereignty over Kosovo. Serbian troops and federal police withdrew as NATO peacekeepers arrived to find Kosovo in disarray. The bombing of cities terrorized locals, and many had fled into the countryside. KLA gangs went on rampages, threatening and killing Serbian Christians while burning many churches. In the days after the Serbian army withdrew, over 164,000 Serbs and 24,000 Roma left Kosovo. Many of the remaining Serbian civilians, as well as Albanians perceived as collaborators, were victims of abuse, which included beatings, abductions, and murder. NATO forces managed some order, while the UN was dragged in to administer Kosovo. Over the next few years, Serbian government property and businesses were seized and sold to Western corporations. The United States constructed a large military basis called Camp Bondsteel that became the largest American base in the Balkans, with a hospital, movie theater, 3 gyms, 2 recreation buildings, a chapel, a huge dining facility, a library, a fire station, a military police station, an education center with college classes, 2 cappuccino bars, a Burger King, a Taco Bell, an Anthony's Pizzeria, a barber shop, a laundry facility, a sewing shop, and a Thai massage parlor. The seizure and selling of Serbian property and permanent American military bases were not part of the 1999 agreement with Serbia to allow temporary NATO peacekeepers. The looting of Kosovo and lies about Serbian atrocities became news in Europe. Canadian Major General Louis McKenzie commanded United Nations troops during the Bosnian Civil War of 1992. He followed these events closely and in 2004 penned an article, quote, "We bombed the wrong side in Kosovo," where he surmised, quote, "NATO sprung into action and, in spite of the fact no member nation of the alliance was threatened, commenced bombing not only Kosovo, but the infrastructure and population of Serbia itself, without the authorizing United Nations resolution so revered by Canadian leadership, past and present. Those of us who warned that the West was being sucked in on the side of an extremist, militant Kosovo Albanian independence movement were dismissed as appeasers. The fact that the lead organization spearheading the fight for independence, the Kosovo Liberation Army, was universally designated a terrorist organization and known to be receiving support from Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda was conveniently ignored. There was no genocide as claimed by the West. The 100,000 allegedly buried in mass graves turned out to be around 2,000 of all ethnic origins, including those killed in combat during the war itself. In 2008, Kosovo declared independence. United Nations representatives objected and left Kosovo, since that was never agreed to by Serbia or the UN. The American empire applauded its new vassal state and pressured other nations to endorse its independence. Most nations of the world refused, since allowing a minority group to violently gain independence sets a bad precedent. Russia has restless Muslim minorities in the south. China has Tibet troubles. Spain has its troublesome Basque and Catalan minorities, while Turkey fights its Kurds. Even the United Kingdom deals with independence movements in Ireland and Scotland. Serbia's president and its largest political party remain firm that Kosovo is part of Serbia. As a result, NATO is stuck in a quagmire. If NATO forces withdraw, Serbian forces will reoccupy their own territory. Serbia did not recognize the illegal privatization of their land, buildings, and industry, so investments in Kosovo by international carpetbaggers would be lost. The empire would be forced to abandon its new strategic base at Camp Bondsteel that the CIA uses for illegal detentions and interrogations. Bombing Serbia was a family affair in the Clinton White House. A biography of Hillary Clinton, written by Gail Sheehy, published in late 1999, stated that Mrs. Clinton had refused to talk to the president for 8 months after the Monica Lewinsky sex scandal. She resumed talking to her husband only when she phoned him and urged him in the strongest terms to begin bombing Serbia. American bombs fell within 24 hours.